Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming out to this special concert. For those of you, many of you know me because I've worked, I think everybody knows me here, but for those who might not remember me, my name is Brenton McGee, and I'm part of the activities, the Performing Arts Associate here at Friends Home at Kennett Square, and it's my honor and distinct pleasure to bring live concerts. We haven't had a serious live, we've had some concerts this past year, but we haven't had a big serious concert like a recital as we have today since COVID, so we are privileged to have that. Many of you might not know who my mom is. You might know me, but I want to introduce my mom. Mom, can you stand up and give her a hand? My mother, Charlie McGee, is here with us today.
Nice to be back here.
And today's special guest is a friend of mine named Michael Dutka, and he has brought some singer friends as well. And I'm going to introduce Misha Dutka. His name is, you can just call him Mike, I assume. And he's a great guy. We'll keep it casual. And he is a composer and musician. You will hear him present his opera Liebewahr. And it's about the Holocaust, the Jews who entertained Nazis during World War II. I'll let you describe your opera. And Liebewahr is German for the little blind girl. Now, good news is that the whole opera is in English. So there's not going to be any foreign words today, I assume. And so I'll just read a little bit of his bio, and then I'm going to give the floor to Mike here. Michael Dutka is a very talented Philadelphia-based composer known for his unique operas and imaginative productions. He will be here with us along with some of the opera cast members and from Delaware Valley Opera Company. And they're here in order to present portions of his brand new opera, Liebewahr. It's translated as The Little Blind Girl. This opera is the story of a concentration camp where thousands of Jewish artists, singers, writers, composers, and musicians were kept in order to entertain the German officials. Come and be inspired today, and that's why we are here. So without further ado, my friend and music composer from Philadelphia, the floor is yours, Michael Dutka. Give him a hand.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much. Thank you, Lane. Thank you to everybody who came. We appreciate you coming out. Originally, when Brenton asked me to come here, what he said was he wanted, well, we'd like to come and give a lecture. And I said, well, a lecture? If people want to sit and hear me talk, they want to hear music. But I did have an idea, and I wanted to use that thought to sort of position in your minds the kind of music you're going to be hearing. There's a lovely expression I heard once. It was, art is the way we decorate space. Music is the way we decorate time. Isn't that a nice expression? And if you think about it, it's really true. We've got those lovely spoons and forks, and we've got fresh coffee there. We've got art decorating the spaces here. But what do we use to decorate our time? We write and we make music. And if you think about it, one thing we have in common whenever we're making music is we have some concept of time. Every bit of music you hear has some thought of time. I don't know, some of you may have heard a piece called 4:33 by John Cage, in which people just sit there for 4 minutes and 33 seconds and don't do anything. But even that, nobody's doing anything. That has a concept of time. He said, well, can we only do it for 3 minutes and 34? No, it's got to be 4 minutes and 33 seconds. He actually said that. So every bit of music you're hearing has some concept of time. When musicians think in terms of time, they think in terms of time signatures. Music is a language. It's evolved over millennia, just like all of our languages, just like English, or sometimes we sing in French or Italian, etc. Music is a language too. And one aspect of the language, like language has grammar and syntax, okay, and vocabulary, music has time. It has time signatures. And so maybe you could help us out. We'll review some of the time signatures. The most common time signature is what we call, C, standard time, which is the same as 4/4. And so that's another thing. Bum, 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 bum. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I thought, what does everybody like? I like fruit. I think most people like fruit. So I wrote this out in terms of fruit. Watermelons, 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 watermelons. grade, okay? And that's 4 quarter notes, okay? Now we could have the same time signature, 4, 4, and C are pretty much the same, but we're just gonna do it a little, have faster notes, because we're gonna add cantaloupes. Cantaloupes and watermelons, cantaloupes and watermelons, cantaloupes and watermelons, cantaloupes and watermelons. They're the same thing, watermelons, cantaloupes and watermelons, just with faster notes. What happens if we take away the watermelons? We get cantaloupes, 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 cantaloupes. That's what we call 3/4 time. You had C or 4/4 time. That's what we call 3/4 time. And a lot of you folks have heard 3/4 time. When you hear it, you think in terms of a waltz. Cha da 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 bum ba. That's 3/4 time. Yumpa. 3/4 time. Okay. Now we also have 6/8 time. Now this is tricky. When we all went to school and we learned arithmetic, we learned that 6/8 and 3/4 are the same. But in music, they're really not. Because in music, when you have 6/8, you're not thinking in terms of yum bum bum bum. You're thinking of a 2. Dum bum 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 bum. So here we have strawberries, blueberries, strawberries, blueberries, strawberries, blueberries, strawberries, blueberries. Okay? It's really different from 3/4. Okay? The vast majority, like probably 90% of the music you've sung, the music you've heard, if you've sung church hymns in church, etc., have been in one of those 3 time signatures. The vast majority of music. And composers do fancy things. They have cut time, like kumquats, 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 kumquat, which is C, cut time. And we could just write that in 2/2 instead of 4/4. What's the difference? It's focusing more on the 2 beats as opposed to the 4. Yum, 2, 3, 4. It's 1, 2, 3. So it's kumquats, 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 kumquats. But we won't talk any more about them because they're out of season. Okay? And now, the same thing, 8/8. Composers get fancy. Who cares? Cantaloupes and watermelons, cantaloupes and watermelons, cantaloupes and water. It's the same thing as 4/4. Some composer decided to be fancy and show off. Okay. Yeah. Okay, but then you see on the very bottom, the last one on your first page, some composers really do this for an effect. Cantaloupes and apples and pears. Cantaloupes and apples and pears. We're throwing in a triplet there to make the rhythm more interesting, a little trickier. So that's a 4. That really is a 4/4, but we've got a nice triplet in the 3rd beat. We could do the same thing and have more triplets. Cantaloupes, apples, and pears, and strawberries. Cantaloupes, apples, and pears, and strawberries. Okay? But as long as we've got all those triplets, why not write it in 12/8 and say the triples are the normal notes and the duple is a duple. Cantaloupes, apples, and pears, and strawberries. Cantaloupes, apples, and pears, and strawberries. Okay? That's the same thing. That's 12/8. And 12/8 is really like 4/4, except you're focusing on the triplet. Then we get creative. The 3/4, if we had a lot of triplets, that would be a 9/8. Strawberries, blueberries, blackberries. Strawberries, blueberries, blackberries. Strawberries, blueberries, blackberries. Is anybody else getting hungry? Okay. Now, sometimes composers want to show off. I occasionally do, writing 7/8. Cantaloupes and plums and pears, cantaloupes and plums and pears, cantaloupes and plums and pears. Okay, and then we want to reverse it. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Apples and watermelons, apples and watermelons. And if we want to do 11/8, actually, can I get the piano section? Here's a melody that, play the melody that some of you have heard, a nice 11/8, you know. Nice 11/8. One, you know, all the fruits that we love all can fit in 11/8. All the fruits that we love can fit in 11/8. And that was Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition. He wrote it a little differently. He had 2 different time signatures, but I decided to make it easy. So now,
Those are the lyrics.
yeah. Thanks, Liz. Okay, but enough talking. I'd rather hear music than talk, you know. So we have a bunch of musicians. We have our wonderful accompanist, Austin Bieber, here. We have Annabella Carpaccio, we have Tassie Lee, we have Lily Coe, Julie Smith, and Elise Rajnai, Elise Francesca, and from DVOC, another wonderful singer who our loss will not be singing for us today, but hopefully we'll have her back sometime, Larice Kennett, and she's going to present a little bit about DVOC, who we are and what we do. But with no further ado, enough talking, Michael, let's start singing. And let's start with, let's start with a piece that shows a very, very good way to present 4/4 tempo. This will sound very fast and very fancy, but it's really nothing but a 4/4 piece. So let's start, give a hand to Elise Rajnai, who's going to sing a piece from Libavar to give a little introduction. The character she plays in Libavar is a woman who was a wonderful opera singer, playing a woman who was a wonderful opera singer in Berlin in the 30s, in the Kroll Opera in Berlin, and she didn't tell anybody she was Jewish, and she stayed in Berlin singing operas until they found she was Jewish and sent her to a concentration camp. And in this scene, she's explaining why she stayed. Like a whole bunch of other people got out. Why did you stay? And she said, well, because I was waiting for one more bow. She just like, one more bow and then I'll leave. And by then it was too late. So just, this opera was written for a full orchestra. So Austin was doing everything an entire orchestra should have been doing with only 2 hands. So very, very good job. Okay, well, while we're still in 4/4, we're going to take a little bit of a different tack here. Years ago, I got a job playing the main character in A Midsummer Night's Dream. I thought it was just going to be a play, and then they found that I was a composer and said, well, why don't you write a little incidental music? Why don't you write an aria? By the time I was finished, we turned it into a half of an opera. And I said, Mike, you're a little slow learning Act 5. Okay, but there was one thing that I always loved. In the very, very beginning, there's a scene from A Midsummer Night's Dream when, who is it? Hermia pledges to elope with her young love, Lysander. And I heard these words, by all the vows that ever men have broke, in number more than women ever spoke. Like, man, you have to be deaf if you can't hear music. If you can't hear the music in those lines. So we're going to hear our lovely Lily Cull singing this my musical adaptation of that dialogue. And again, we're still in 4/4, although I do throw a little bit of a curve toward the very end, so you'll hear that. Folks?
Oh meet with thee? Oh, truly, truly, will I meet with thee?
Okay, so now we're gonna get back to a Liebevar, and one of the main characters in Liebevar is a character named Wallstein. He is not one of the singers, composers, writers, artists. He's an impresario. He's sort of like a lovable huckster. He made his living in Berlin by putting on shows and just trying to rake out, grab a little quick cash whenever he could. And he was sent to the concentration camp, and he's the one who's sort of the producer of all the shows. And you're gonna have a very, very familiar person singing about what it takes to be an impresario. Please welcome your very old friend of yours, a new friend of mine, Brendan.
A great impresario in my scenario needs to be equal, but fraud and Lothario. You need to know that how the kind of show is going to please all your patrons, and how to charm at first a ticket price from pounds for fraud and matrons. And if you are skillful at best, it's willful your rest of your marks from each passerby spewful. There's really no end to the land that you'll go just to get them to come see the show. Come see the show. Come see the show when you need a new show with a clamoring horde. First get your composers and writers on board. They well understood that they can't hold the candle, the shape or handle, but still you make do, cause there's nobody better than you can afford. You give them a trust and a minute you write it for. Helped a few parts in your first one and added on. Pulled the whole thing in the trust, but now you are hurrying for cash and you're barely a few steps ahead of the creditor. You realize a total revision that brings you all into vision, and so there's a final decision. That means the damn thing is so rich. The starting rehearsals and messing in personal law on the stuff to buy custom and personal anger and visioning failures and fun, and the threat of complete destitution that shows it up in confusion, and critics give their attribution, and suddenly everyone knows it's a hit, a powerful hit. Just might have been better than other producers like you, sir. You probably find his head's liquid fine. Not to mention the obvious fact that his bearers are very much looser compunction and structures and things that are sooner or later outgrown of worm and mayhem or the murder and mayhem. Because as long as they pay him to come see the show, oh, come see the show, come see the show, come see the show. Like any imposter or cheat or a smooth talking party house greeter, he knows how to get the crowd swaggering, staggering into the theater. He learned that the public in mass prefers cautionary 5-minute class, but the ticket sales are more. Then a girl's bra comes unfastened. He gets the most weight from his clothing, it lasts in excess, even though he didn't have a good price if he sold his own devil just so that they come see the show.
Thank you, Brent. Now, and then you heard, that was what time? That was 3/4. It was like a waltz. We played around a little bit. We got a little bit of 9/8 there, but it was basically 3/4 a waltz time, and sung absolutely beautifully. Thank you so much. So now we're going to get back to Liebevar. Now, the interesting thing about the opera that Brendan was talking about, what I think was interesting, was that it's really two operas. because he's absolutely right, it's about people who wound up in what's called the Theresienstadt concentration camp, where they sent the writers, artists, and composers. But what happens is, they find out that they're going to be sent to Auschwitz-Birkenau, which were the extermination camps. And strangely, I was just there a little bit ago. Just came back from Europe. It's not a happy place. So, and they say, well, what do we do? We're gonna fight back. Like, with what? What can we fight back with? With opera. Their plan is they're gonna write an opera so good that the Nazis are gonna wanna keep hearing it. And then so they won't wanna kill the people who are in the opera because they wanna keep hearing the opera. And that's their sneaky plot, and that's the plot of my opera. So now we get into the opera, which is called, and the opera is called Liebevar, or The Little Blind Girl. They get into a big fight in Act 2 because they have no idea what their opera is going to be about. And then this blind girl shows up with a beautiful voice. And they say, well, we'll write an opera about a blind girl. So the opera Liebevar, or The Little Blind Girl, is about people who write an opera called Liebevar, or The Little Blind Girl. Very unfortunately, our little blind girl has a strep throat. She couldn't be here today. So we're going to do sections without her. In the opera within the opera, the third act is the opera they wrote. And the fourth act, they figure out who gets on the train to go to Berlin to sing the opera, and who gets on the train to Auschwitz-Birkenau to get the idea. The basic story of the opera is a little mystical village in which all the children are disappearing, except for this one little blind girl, and all of a sudden, and we have no idea why they're disappearing, and then she gets lured out. And we're gonna hear that right now, how she gets lured. So, and we're gonna have all of our lovely singers being the ghostly voices that lure a little blind girl out into the woods, and I'm gonna help out, or at least try not to hinder, by conducting. Okay, right from bar 18, have a page 3. Entranced by this weird harp music. happens is that in the next act, this little blind girl winds up blind in the middle of the forest because she wakes up, there's a thunderstorm, as you heard from all those rumbling low notes that Austin was playing. A thunderstorm breaks out and she wakes up and she realizes she's blind in the middle of the forest. But she meets 4 friendly animals who are going to be played by Julie, Lily, Cassia, and Annabella. And she tells them, well, I need to find the rest of the children. All the children in my village have disappeared. And they say, well, we know where they are. We'll take you there. Oops. And sorry, let me correct this. Modern technology. And we'll take you there. And she said, well, and they start to run off. I said, well, I can't follow you. I'm blind. Well, then we'll go together hand in hand. And this is, even as wonderful as Austin is, this is a little too hard for anyone to play on the piano because it's really orchestral fugue. And if any of you are familiar with a little klezmer music, obviously there are Jews writing this, you'll recognize some musical formats. But again, we're right back to 4/4. The last one you heard, that was 6/8. Yum ba-dum dum ba-dum bum 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 bum. We're going back to 4/4. So let's go to this and when they all start dancing around with a little blind girl, they'll do the best they can. So now you've heard 4/4, you've heard Brenton sing a wonderful waltz in 3, Brenton wonderfully singing a waltz in 3/4, you've heard that 6/8 number, that's another 4/4 number. Now we're going to sing a piece that combines everything. And I think I actually have to sing this too. Let me get a sip of water.
Is this the finale, Mike?
Yes, it is.
Yes, this
All right,
is the finale.
so
So you wanna
this
go?
is-
Thank you.
Finale.
Where do you want me to be?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Can I stand here?
Yeah.
Hey, Louis, you want to come back? You want- Okay, because the lead was sick today, Lily is a wonderful singer and sight reader, and so she's going to be singing that part. And she's going to kind of be doing double duty in case anything looks a little weird. She's going to be singing her part as the duckling, one of the 4 friendly animals, and as the little blind girl. Oops. And not good if I got the right. There we go. Yeah, stay.
Where you start?
So right from the edge. Right. And I'll also do, okay, one thing I didn't mention. The reason all the children are disappearing is because they've been captured by an evil ogre with a little toothbrush mustache. Okay, and so she meets this evil ogre, and then one thing about the little blind girl, she has very, very clever hands. She's very, very good at making things. So she makes a bow and arrow to kill the evil ogre. And she goes to the little clearing where the evil ogre waits for her, but she has a question, and we'll start out with that. Right from the edge, Maestro?
But how can I aim my bow and arrow? I can't see. Your skin is in your hands, but your true power is in your beautiful voice. And good must triumph over evil. Sooner or later, sometimes so much later than the earth bleeds, for she has no more tears to shed. When the time comes, you will know what to do. Lord of the woods, won't you sing with me, sing with me? Where forest treasures I bring with me, with love and thistlethorn, powder and your horn, leaves newly shorn from the lamb newly born. Lord of the woods, won't you call to me, call to me? I bring my offerings, all for thee, all for thee. What rest a crown, to those where I go down, quite bright and brown like the soft velvet gown. Lord of the woods, may I hear thy voice, though all the forest may fear thy voice, hear in his name. How I will sing, all my life long sing the tenderest song that the bird of the woods ever heard. I will sing to thee, call to thee, give myself all to thee, whoever take thy word. I will ever be thy little bird.
And the ogre makes, yes, little bit, I will sing with you, sing and give thanks for the offerings you bring with you, here in your gilded cage, forever and a day, until you are ready to eat. Such a delectable treat, then you will sing to me,
All to thee,
give thyself all to me.
Lord of
My little bird, you will sing as sweetly as I've ever heard. you so much. Thank everybody. And now, if you would, we would lend us your ears, as Shakespeare said. Louise Kell, who's part of the outreach committee, at the head of the outreach committee for the Delaware Valley Opera Company, we'd just like to give you a few words on who we are and what we do. So,
Yes.
Louise.
And hopefully you will hear her sing sometime because she's wonderful, but not today.
First, let me say thank you so much for coming to this performance. It is what we do wouldn't exist without you. And so we truly, truly appreciate that. As an organization, Delaware Valley Opera has been in existence since about 1979. It was started by friends and lovers and supporters of opera. And they said, well, let's build an organization which would allow young people at varying levels of their career an opportunity to ply their trade. And it's a community of volunteers. Everyone offers their time and their abilities. We do have a funded season. We have primarily a summer season. And for this year, we're going to do 5 wonderful shows. Usually we just do 3, but we're doing Susanna by Carlisle Floyd. I get to read, I have cheat notes. We're doing Goyescas, which will be the first time we're doing this, and this is kind of an impressionistic work. You know, if you know the paintings, the music itself has the same feeling. We're doing more of a comedy opera. It's also a 1-act, which is Abu Hassan, which is quite charming. And then we're doing the 2 war horses of opera. We're doing Cavalleria Rusticana and Pagliacci. So if there's an opportunity for your guys to come and see us, we would love that. But we are also, if you'll have us, willing to come back and maybe do highlights from our summer season in the fall. But once again, thank you for opening your doors and your hearts and letting us come in. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to any of us. You can always contact me. And, this once again, thank you for the lovely, talented singers for providing your expertise.
And so our partner's going to stay right here is that we've been in touch, and so we will have these concerts for sign-ups for you all. Because I said, they said, you think you'd be interested in this? I said, yes, I know of at least a few that to see some opera concerts at Friends' Home will happily support your opera company and what Michael is doing with his music. I mean, it's just amazing. So we will be in contact with you about that. We definitely come to your operas in the future, and we'll do sign-up sheets, so you just have to send the information and stuff. So let's give them a hand. Let's give everybody a hand. So what we would like to do very quickly is I want all the singers and the musicians to introduce themselves, and then if you have questions for Michael or for any of the performers, just raise your hand, and any questions about his opera. He has a whole big opera, so there might be something you didn't know about the opera or his musical background. Now's the time. We'll just take a couple. We won't be here for a while, obviously, but just if you have a few questions, think about that. But I'd like everybody to introduce themselves, starting with you.
Hi everyone, my name is Julie Smith. I've been singing in the area for the past about 5 years at this point. I've been involved with DVOC since 2017, and I do both musical theater and opera.
Elise, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Elise, and I am just a freelance singer in the Philadelphia area, and I got involved in this project because I sang with Bohème Opera earlier in the first iteration of the other parts of Leap of Our. I played Rivka as well, so that's kind of how I got involved in the DVOC portion of the project.
And Elise and I worked together in Bohème Opera, New Jersey. We sang this production in New Jersey. So Mike and I, we were working hard for about a month and a half to pull this production. So it's a pleasure to have you here. So, thank you.
Hi, so I'm Lily. This is my very first production with the Delaware Valley Opera Company. Mike reached out to me because we have some friends from a Gilbert and Sullivan group that I also sing with in the area. So it's been huge fun to get to do some opera.
Nice.
Yeah, hi, my name is Cassia Lee. I'm a soprano too, and I did 3 productions with the Delaware Valley Opera Company, and yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Annabella Capaccio. I'm also a soprano. I
just graduated college last year, so this is like one of the first things I've done. But it was really fun with the DVOC.
And how about the accompanist here? That's incredibly, I must say, that's incredibly tough piano to play, so give him credit. Amazing. So introduce yourself for everybody.
So I'm Austin. I'm just an accompanist for whoever needs it. But I live in South Jersey. So I'm
South Jersey. Came here from South Jersey. Amazing. So what we like to do is it is like a lecture type concert. So if you have a question for Michael, for the musicians, don't ask me questions. You can ask me questions anytime. But really, I want to give the time to them. So any questions for them about the music, just raise your hand and let's start. Any questions for Mike or the musicians? Or any comments? Any comments?
I think you're great.
You think you're great also. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thanks, Marie. Anybody else?
How long have they been together?
How long have they been together? Well,
I can answer this. So we have been put together for this opera. So we started rehearsing in August.
in August.
Some of us knew each other before that, but for this thing, we started in August. We had our performance in September, and now we're coming back to it after that.
So August. Mother, you had a question, Mom?
For Michael.
For Mike. Okay.
Mike,
Sure.
this opera is a newer style opera,
A little bit.
which is different, you know, to everybody. What do you think is the biggest difference between the classical operas that people are used to hearing and the newer operas, what people are composing and doing today?
Well, they're all, it's a very, very good question, but a very complex question, because they're all different styles of opera. I'm sure, you know, you're familiar with minimalist styles, you know, Philip Glass, whose music I happen to really admire. It's just not the style I write in, but I think he's wonderful, where you take sort of a musical concept and keep repeating it, changing it very, very minimally. You then have the 12-tonal style, which was all the rage when I was in school writing. It's like, unless you're writing the same 12-tonal music that everybody else is writing, you're a conformist. Like, okay. One thing that if I give some examples, thanks, Austin. I mean, when you hear, you know, Mozart, you hear, you know, you have an F major chord. It's probably going to go to a B flat or a major or a B flat minor chord. But for me, if I have an F major, probably going to go to a B minor chord or something like that. The harmonies, the harmonic progressions are very, very different. The voice leaps. I don't know if you realize how difficult a piece Elise sang. That is an extraordinarily difficult piece. And I don't write, you know, music just to be difficult, just to make life hard for Elise. She's a nice lady. I don't want to make life hard for her. The problem is there's so much wonderful music that's been written. So when I sit down to compose, I think most people sit down to compose, the first thought they enters their mind is, what can I do that hasn't been done before? Yeah. And so that's when you start getting the different leaps. You think it's going to go to there, but actually it goes to there. Because, you know, Mozart would have gone there, and Mozart was magnificent, but you can't just write Mozart. He's already written Mozart. You have to do something different. So I think those are some of the differences. The harmonic progressions are very, very different. The melodic progressions need to be different. Orchestra, I mean, you didn't hear a lot of orchestration, but those tend to be very different. If you hear some of the new music being written, you know, what is it, Cold Mountain, which was shown at the Academy of Music in Philadelphia, and how instead of having, you know, this choir, the woodwinds do this, and the strings do that, and the brass does that, she would have these sweeping cello lines. This is Jennifer Higdon, with a sweeping cello line and a French horn obbligato over it. Or the new opera Eurydice, where instead of having, you have the stuff on top, the melodic stuff on top, the bass stuff, and then you have all the harmonic stuff in the middle. Well, he left the harmonic stuff out of the middle. And it sounded interesting. It was wonderful. He did that very deliberately. Did he forget? Nope, he did that deliberately. So things like that. What can we do that's different? So I think that's the main challenge for us.
Who influenced your music the most?
Oh, wow. Well, in terms of composers, probably Gilbert and Sullivan. I mean, I grew up singing Gilbert and Sullivan, and a lot of the people here are very familiar. Lily and Julie are very familiar with singing a lot of Gilbert and Sullivan. Brenton sang that wonderful performance that Brenton gave. That's a patter song with lots and lots of words coming out very quickly. That's what they're famous for. I am the very model of a modern major general, like information, animal, vegetable, and mineral. I know the kings of England, and I quote the Pike's historical from Marathon to Waterloo in order categorical, etc. Lots of words very, very fast. They're oh, sorry. Yeah, no. That's not my part, sorry. That's a baritone part, and I'm a bass. But those are the kinds of things that influenced me. But I had one conductor that I worked with when I was in college. I was a young man, and he was a teacher and he was a conductor. And just like half the time when I go through my scores, I think, I wrote something very specifically for what that meant. He's long since passed. His name was Harold Axe. He's long since passed, but I wrote that specifically because of something he taught me. When you do something once, don't do it exactly the same time. Do it a little shorter, do it a little differently. Think of it, do it at the same time, but acknowledge you've done something, one time, one way one time, do it a little differently the second time. When you tell your story, don't recap it exactly in the same words. Shorten it every time. Make everything move, things like that. And he was a wonderful teacher, and I'll never forget him.
Wow,
Wow,
great.
that's wonderful.
Good. Alan, go ahead, Alan.
Mike, one of the things I hear in the jumps that you talked about, I've sung in choirs for many years.
Oh, wonderful.
But they're very useful in portraying some of the emotions when you have a depression or something. That's when this type of jump is very good at conveying that emotional feeling. And that's what's very useful in the style that you're using right now.
That's a very interesting observation. Well, thank you. Thank you.
Very
That means
good.
a lot to
What
me.
was it? We couldn't hear it back here.
Say that again.
Anybody notice?
Well, I'm saying that when he needs to show an emotion that's not sweetness of the light, the difficult part in any story, even fairy tales are full of it.
Emotional part of the story.
Yeah, and these jumps that are very difficult to make are very good at showing that particular kind of emotion in this story. So it's very useful
Very
for
useful,
that kind of thing.
And he's very good at that. Mike's a very good composer, right? Big leaps, but making it work really well. There's composers they're not quite as good when they write, but Mike's very good at that. His music is very lyrical for modern. He doesn't write in atonalism or minimalism. He writes, I think it's very melodic, but in a modern way.
Although if you remember, Brenton,
Yeah.
there's one scene in the finale. Okay, the opera is very long and complicated, but the finale of Act 1 is essentially a concert. And this is a historical fact. The Jewish prisoners at Theresienstadt would put on these elaborate concerts for the Nazi guards who were beating the tar out of them the rest of the week. But in our opera, the commandant realizes he has no musical talent whatsoever, but he wants to be a composer. And he's the commandant who's got all the guards with a machine gun, so if he writes something, you gotta believe that they perform it. And he performs this atonal drivel, right, which is the stuff that they tried to make me write when I was young, and so I'm like, that's a little bit of my getting back at them. Absolutely, you remember that
Yeah,
scene?
I remember it.
And
I
he's
do,
like,
yeah.
well, this is, well, it's better than its last piece, that wouldn't be difficult. And they're like, oh, this part's different, better? No, just different. And then it goes back to my more lyrical style. But Brent's absolutely right. What I tried very hard to make it so what the audience hears is just lyrical music, but actually what these singers are doing is very, very difficult.
Yes.
Much more difficult than it sounds.
Very hard. Very hard.
So we've really done a wonderful job.
I agree.
Couple more comments if anybody has any. Daniel, yes.
How long does your concert last, from beginning to end?
The whole opera? It's a good question. It's a long one. By the time, with intermissions, if it would be performed front and back with the opera within the opera, you'd be pushing 3.5 hours.
3.5 hour opera, yeah. It was long. We had cut Act 3 when we did it at Bohème Opera, and it was 2.5 hours when we sang it. And it was a late night. I'll say I didn't get home till about 3 in the morning.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it was pretty late.
I guess it's choreographed too, right?
A lot of it, yes. In fact, that dance, the hand in hand move. what they had was, these ladies were all dressed up as, the different animals, the turtle, the squirrel, the fawn, and a duckling, and they had their dance, but then all these little kids in little animal costumes came out onto the stage playing little toy instruments, so that's why you heard that background. That's why that couldn't be played on piano, because it's an orchestral fugue that just really can't be played piano, and they were dancing around.
Good, excellent, Daniel, excellent. A couple more, and then we'll be done for the day. A couple more. Anybody got a comment? Peter, do you have a comment? Not really. Anybody else?
Is it a soundtrack?
There really isn't. We recorded that, but on my website, and it's just mishadutka.com, and I'll write that out.
Yeah.
And Brendan, you can hear 4 formally recorded excerpts of the opera. One of it's a very, very sad scene. There's this young girl in the opera who takes care of all the children, and everybody thinks she's so sweet and nice. And then in the end of Act 2, she reveals to the audience her plot to betray he's the impresario, and she plays the prima donna of the opera company, who is the mistress of the commandant. But the commandant doesn't know that secretly they're in love. And this sweet young girl, we think a sweet young girl, she says, yeah, but I'm going to tell the commandant, and like, you're surprised? That's how I've survived this war so far. She's going to betray everybody. We've got that, and we've got 4 scenes from the opera within the opera, including the scene, some of the scenes you've heard. Act 4, another one that you didn't hear, in the darkness, with a little blind girl, prays for guidance, prays for, Lord, whose love will never end, lead me to a friend, and she gets 4. And then some other scenes where we first meet the evil ogre, and then the finale, which you've heard. So you can see that on my website, and maybe Brent knows.
And it's also, we recorded, when we did it, there's also a YouTube version of our opera. It doesn't have we didn't have the children's opera in there, the Act 3. But the whole opera we recorded live in YouTube, and so you can watch that. We could actually, if you're interested, we can actually set a time, put it on the schedule, we can watch that opera. It's on my YouTube page, and I can send that link, and we can look that up sometime. So the music is online, so, okay? Good, we can set that up sometime.
Yeah, sounds great.
Thank
Oh,
you.
thank you.
Any other comments?
No.
No? Okay. Thank you. Let's give him a hand. And thank you so much. I know we will have these types of concerts more often. I encourage you to talk to me, since I'm kind of in charge of concerts now, what type of music you want. We'll have a variety of things. Obviously today was more of an opera type concert, but there's some ideas that I'm looking towards in the future. So we will have this continuous as we enter our 125th season next year at Friends Home in Kennett, 1898. So next year we got some big plans, because next year is our 125th anniversary of Friends Home being a nursing home for people in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. So please let me know, and we will continue to have these types of concerts more often. Thanks for coming. God bless you, and let's give Michael and friends a great hand. Thanks for coming. Have a great day. Thank you.